immediately after that event, every like anti-American liberal wacko became a use of force expert, right? You have like Ilhan Omar and others saying this is murder, and all the Democrats saying this is murder, and then other Dems who didn't want to go that far on CNN or elsewhere, are trying to give like a quasi-legal argument about it, saying like, no, he shouldn't have done that. He wasn't within his rights, and it's just incredibly frustrating to watch that because the effect it has on like a population. Keep in mind they convinced like this mentally ill and unhinged population already that it's legal to do these things in the first place. Now they're convincing.
Right. They've called for the violence against
right.
the ICE officers,
right.
and then yeah,
and now they're use of force experts too. And so I'm sitting there like, this isn't gonna fly with us.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Signal Sitdown, but before we get to the interview, we'd love it if you'd hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you may be joining us. And please remember to give us a 5-star review because we love your feedback. Remember, it's your government, and together we'll expose how it really works and how to affect real change. Without further ado, here's the interview. Mike Howell, welcome back to the Signal Sitdown.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be the Signal Sit Up today, though.
Sit up and strap in. Because you are the president of the Oversight Project. The Oversight Project has been covering the fraud and the fallout of what's been going on in Minnesota. And you just recently ran an analysis, you and your team, that clears this ICE officer involved in the shooting of Renne Good, the fatal shooting of Renne Good. First, tell us about that analysis and that effort, because we've gotten this deluge of information and videos. And, the idea was that this was going to make things so much easier to tell who was in the right and who was in the wrong, the body cams and all this stuff. And I don't know, from where I sit, I watch that body cam, I hear the thud of the car running into this ICE officer, and I think to myself, oh, this is clear. And then the entire world, like right, left, and center, has all these different opinions on what should have actually happened in this situation. And you guys actually did the work to go through step by step using the legal expertise to figure out what happened here.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, like immediately after that event, every like anti-American liberal wacko became a use of force expert, right? You have like Ilhan Omar and others saying this is murder, and all the Democrats saying this is murder, and then other Dems who didn't want to go that far on CNN or elsewhere, are trying to give like a quasi-legal argument about it, saying like, no, he shouldn't have done that. He wasn't within his rights, and it's just incredibly frustrating to watch that because the effect it has on like a population. Keep in mind they convinced like this mentally ill and unhinged population already that it's legal to do these things in the first place. Now they're convincing.
Right. They've called for the violence against the ICE officers,
right.
and then
and now they're use of force experts too. And so I'm sitting there like, this isn't going to fly with us. The Oversight Project is unique amongst organizations in that we have like over 60 years of very sensitive and senior law enforcement experience from the FBI, intelligence community, elsewhere. And so I asked our guys who actually have, wielded weapons for a living and been in law enforcement for a long time at the highest levels, like, hey, just do a use of force analysis. I know this seems like obvious, but break it down. And so that's what they did. And we put this out. It's indisputable that he was acting within his rights. He was justified, not only legally, but in everything beneath that, right? It's like, was this the right thing to do? Yes, it was. And we put that out there because, we're always going to have the back of ICE. They're under attack by this domestic terrorism movement. And we hope this could be a benefit to them. And should there be legal consequences for this guy at some level, which there won't be because DOJ is not going to charge him rightfully. They're not even going to investigate him because there's nothing to investigate. We're prepared to jump in and defend him. And so that's what we did.
So this shooting is part of this, what was it, Operation Metro, where they were going into Minneapolis following just incredible revelations of wide-scale fraud in Minnesota that date back longer than a decade, right? Like we saw the first inklings of this in 2013, I think. But since COVID, and since Nick Shirley's bombshell video came out, this has gotten to be a way bigger deal than anyone ever thought it was going to be. And that was kind of the raison d'etre for ICE going in and saying, okay, we have evidence now that illegal immigrants are committing wide-scale fraud or are part of this fraud system. And so we're going to get these people out of these Minnesota communities. First, just your reactions to the developments in Minnesota over the past month. What did you make of Nick Shirley's video?
Yeah, so the mask is dropped. I love Nick Shirley's video because it really easily makes the point that I think a lot of people are grasping now, that like fraud is a governing strategy, particularly when paired with mass demographic change of legal and illegal immigration of the left. It is their governing strategy. And the fraud doesn't just go back like, to 2013. We have this thing called Doc Depot, where millions of documents that we uncover, we throw them into place that people can search. It's like, linked up with some form of AI and whatnot. We're like, let's just see how far, we can go back on Somalian fraud. We pulled stuff from 1999 about how they're just ripping off the food stamps program. This has been like a known problem by the government for, 30 years at least. And it's obvious. You import a bunch of pirates from a backwards country, they're going to continue their pirating ways. This is their form of government. And the Democrats understand it's their form of government. And you got to look at like, this is basically a wealth transfer. The goal of a Democrat politician, particularly, in state and local things, but the Democrats nationally give them top cover for them, is to move as much money, wealth transfers, out of the federal coffers into their preferred constituencies. You can do that in a lot of ways. You can do that above the table or beneath the table. But the point is, you just get the money to them. This is corruption, but it's a form of government. And if you're a Minnesota politician, Democrat, like you are judged by whether you can do that. How much money did you get to the Somalians? And so they're not embarrassed by it. It's what they're there to do, and why Alon and Walz are so shamelessly defending it. But gone are the days of like more polite and civilized forms of corruption, I dare say. Like it's not, like the machine Democrat politics of, the last century, where it's like, we'll get you jobs, we'll help the union out, or like we'll get you in the spoil system. No, this is like, we're going to just let you set up fake daycares. And when you drive around those BMWs, like we expect, your community to celebrate that, and that to translate into permanent votes for us. And so that's why they're so upset in defending this stuff, because not only are we attacking their governing strategy, but their core constituency and their ability to like politically organize control around it. That's why they're, literally violently fighting and resisting this.
Well, that's such a good point. I've never heard it articulated like that this is a governing structure, and it's different from the structure of the machine politics of the Democratic Party of old. And when I look at this, folks have looked at the decline in our biggest cities as kind of a breakdown of machine politics, that you had some very shrewd politicians in the early and mid 20th century who, knew whose bread they had to butter and did that. And it wasn't always clean, but at the end of the day, like New York City was kind of a better place for it. Mm-hmm. And the breakdown of that has led to the terrible New York City that we see today. And what you're saying is, no, this is actually an evolution in that pre-existing system to something that's completely detached from American citizens and their well-being, right? The citizens of New York City would be better off under the old style of Democrat machine politics than this new style of Democrat machine politics. I mean, why is it that they're so eager to cut out the American citizen or their constituent from this and focus on these different population types? I remember, our reporter George Caldwell asking Nina Torres if she believed that illegal immigrants were her constituents. And she said, anybody who pays taxes in my district is a constituent, which means, yes, I believe illegal immigrants are my constituents because they pay sales tax. And also, I'm just trying to dodge the question as quickly as possible. That's what that interaction kind of told me. And you're really taken aback by this. But you think to yourself, like, if this is a strategy for political power, why would you cut out obviously the biggest constituency that you could have in the United States of America, which is the average American citizen? I mean, what should that tell us about this new form of government that Democrats in these major cities and blue states are operating under?
Yeah, it should tell you a lot. First off, it's not uniquely Democrat, right? Like you have Rep. Salazar, a quote-unquote Republican.
That's so true.
She said the same thing in Brookings yesterday. She referred to illegal aliens. She did a illegal alien accent many times, which I found humorous, talking about her amnesty bill that she's trying to push on President Trump, which would destroy his administration, honestly.
Okay, tell me about that real quick.
Yeah, Salazar has something called the Dignity Act, where she wants to basically amnesty people that have been here illegally without any like thought to interior enforcement. She sells it as like, oh, they're paying fines.
We've tried that before.
Trust me, I know. She's washing off old amnesty pushes of before, which have been literally destroyed politicians in the Republican Party. Like there's so many. The only one who survived is Marco Rubio from Gang of Eight, and he's amazing now. But like there's a lot of people that aren't here with us in professional politics because they pushed what Salazar is pushing once more. And so at Brookings, she referred to the illegal aliens as her constituents. She even like code shifted or switched, where people talk in different accents. accents. And she's like rifting between her accent and then the illegal aliens accent and having a conversation in this performance at far left Brookings Institute to sell her bill and then saying it's what Trump wants. And so that's the danger, right? So it's not uniquely Democrat. And before I shift off the Republicans, I'll get to the Democrats. Republicans do this too. They do it with the defense industry. They do it with the foreign policy things. And so that's kind of the deal in DC. As everyone knows, there's waste, fraud, and abuse. Democrats want to drive it to illegal aliens and, their urban communities. Republicans want to drive it to industry, particularly the defense industry and others. And so everyone looks the other way. Everyone gets their bread buttered, so to speak. The difference is now it's not like the old style of like buttering the bread of the real estate community in the urban areas, like Mayor Bowser, who's going to go out and be replaced by someone like Mondami style. And I'm not being nice to Bowser here, but her deal was always she existed between like a real estate community in DC who buttered her bread and she buttered theirs and then kept the far left at bay. But that's going to break down. DC is going to go to absolute hell in a hot handbasket unless Trump takes it over, which we're pushing for. And he could, and hopefully he will. But you look at Minneapolis, it's not buttering bread. It's buttering Somalian goop in like a little bowl. It's like very different in style and substance. It's not like this holding together various industries and interests. It's just pure wealth transfers to a new demographic system that they've imported here because their mission now is they're the party of just mass change of America. It's anti-American explicitly. And you have like at the core of that constituency, keeping like permanent ethnic groups in competition versus the system as a whole, where things like ripping it off become justified. You should hate the United States. They owe it to you. They're imperialists. They screwed you. Like there's nothing morally wrong about you setting up a fake autistic center with no autistic kids or a fake daycare with no kids.
And the autistic center, I think that was what was it? Was $2 million, $1 million. Yeah, and that was just a drop in the bucket when you look at this whole thing. But your point about Republicans is so well taken because it's not only the defense industry, it's oftentimes industries where immigrant labor is a big deal. Agricultural industries, service, hotels, etc. Those types of industries and establishments often benefit from very lax immigration policies and procedures. And those are the people that Republicans go to rather than the actual like center of the ethnic community, right? And it makes me think of Tom Emmer, who was a guest of this show, and I really like the House Majority Whip. I think he's a really great, fun podcast guest, fun person to talk to. But in 2015, I mean, he was calling for a complete moratorium on Somali immigration on American. He was saying that the Somali population was fastly assimilating. He co-founded the Somali caucus or something in the House. And now he's calling for a complete end to Somali migration. He wants people to be denaturalized and deported. I mean, that is a major shift in the last decade of Tom Emmer's career, and I think he feels the urgency to do something about this. But like, how does someone like Tom Emmer go from anybody who criticizes the Somali population in Minnesota is un-American, people are calling for a moratorium is un-American, to let's denaturalize and deport all these people? I mean, this is a crazy shift in the last decade, and it just shows the kind of urgency that people are sensing now.
Yeah. So not trying to beat up on Tom Emmer. I like him personally. I've spent some time with him, but yeah, he was part of the problem that got us here. And now he's reacting to a major shift in the political winds. I'm glad he talked about denaturalization. I don't think he's gone far enough. Will he sit there and support like a complete stop of federal funds to Minnesota, or just like limited things where only criminal convictions can be had? I'm not sure where he'll fall down on this, but the answer to it is the Republican Party is kind of a joke. There's some shining stars in it, but mostly you have people like who formed this modern iteration of it, like Mike Pence, for example. We'll call it Mike Pence here. His moralizing of the issue of immigration and defending industry, and now his team's calling for more refugees, even on top of everything we have now, has put the Republican Party in a historical standstill where they're just like, watching and bystanders for the left driving this system crazy. And their constant flirtations with amnesty give the moral cover to really like put this, issue on the ice block. And Democrats have grown into that space that the Mike Pences and, as the avatar of, old school establishment Republicans have allowed them. And it wasn't till President Trump really changed the way we talk about this issue that people are, now speaking in terms of immigration bans, pauses, whatever you want to call it, deport them all, mass deportations. The proof will be whether in this administration can actually carry out that rhetoric with meaningful action. And that's what, we're pushing super hard. That's going to be, I think, the civilizational issue they'll be judged on is, can you not only like stop the left's abuse of our immigration system, but impose a penalty for it, which means massively deporting a lot of people. I'm talking about millions, commas in the number on a regular basis. We're nowhere close to that right now. There's 3 years left to go. I think the senior team at the White House understands they urgently need to deport more people. But we'll see if that happens. And we'll see how like Tom Emmer reacts to like mass deportations in Minneapolis, not just for people convicted of criminal fraud, but for anyone who's here illegally. And we need to stop naturalizing so many damn people. They aren't assimilating. Like you look at these naturalization ceremonies, people come through and the joke of the system, it's like, why are we doing this? We know we have an assimilation crisis in this country. Maybe we're just naturalizing too many people without actually asking them to be part of this country first.
So when we talk about the operations that ICE is carrying out in Minnesota or all across the country, you get on TV or you turn on the TV and you see all these folks talking about how, what's the urgency here? ICE is being sloppy, there are mistakes being made, or there's always this kind of throat clearing about how, I wish the administration could go about this better. And so the administration finds themselves in a rather difficult position, which is deportation numbers aren't as high as a lot of folks on the right would like them to be. And also the deportation optics are making parts of the coalition uncomfortable, you could say. So how do you square this circle, right? How do you achieve the results that you want without making it a massive political liability? I mean, I think that's always something that people should be thinking about, which is how do you go about this process or this program in the best possible way, the best politically feasible way. And I think the numbers need to go up for sure. But I'm not one of those members of the coalition who's getting squeamish by any of this, but I know that there are plenty of them who are. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I say, first off, get your guts in order. No time for being squeamish. This is a civilizational issue. It's about the future of the country. It is more important than politics or polls or anything else. It's about whether we have a country or not. Second is, here's the good and bad news. Democrats and like the libs and even some of these Republicans think right now we actually are living through mass deportations. And they think millions are being deported. They don't understand this is like kind of closer to Obama level numbers. It's just a lot of pomp and circumstance around it and communications around it. I like to say it's mass communications, not mass deportations. And so all that you say is like the Republicans are already paying the cost that Democrats would impose for mass deportations. Like they're already as freaked out as they can be. They're rioting in the streets. They're trying to kill ICE officers. They're reacting as if we're deporting 10 million people. So like, what else do you stand to lose by actually deporting 10 million people? You already have the full weight of their, whatever the consequences they're going to apply. You might as well do it instead of just pretending you're doing it, tweeting about how you're doing it, poking them in the eye every second, and then not doing it. And so like, we already paid the price. Might as well friggin' do it.
Mm-hmm. How do you get those numbers up, in your opinion? I mean, so that they've been boasting about, was it 500,000 deportations and another 1.6 to 1.7 million self-deportations? Yep. I think those are the numbers that the administration was touting around Christmas time. And the big thing for me is like you come out with all these programs to get people to self-deport. You pay them to get out of the country. Which worries me. What worries me is that, a Democrat will come in someday and they'll just pay him to come all right back.
Right.
Be in this basically a cycle of fraud all over again, where, every 4 years they're getting paid to either enter the country or exit the country. But anyways, those are their numbers. And my concern is that if you're relying that much on self-deportations, you have to keep ratcheting up that benefit lever to get people to leave. How do you make sure that the deportation numbers go up and the self-deportation numbers go up in this kind of second phase of the Trump administration's deportation push?
Right. As the nation's leading and only deportation scientist, that's a moniker I gave to myself, because we trust the science and the science can't be, questioned. So therefore, I ask you and everyone else in the world not to question my scientific conclusions as a deportation scientist. But I laid this all out. I'll share it in brief. 2.5 million people haven't left the country as a result of the deportation efforts. And these numbers will come out. Right now, the administration put out conclusions of what the numbers are. They haven't put out the actual numbers, which is a break in even Democrat history. But the numbers are going to come out. ICE does an annual report. The numbers will be about 300,000 to 350,000 ICE deportations. It's not 2.5 million. The self-deportation number that's being advertised is based off of like survey data and statistics and estimates. It's not 2 million. I wish it was. Wish it was 10 million, but I'd be happy with 2 million. We can know what the number of people who took the check, from the U.S. government to leave through the CBP One app is. And I seriously don't think they'll release it because it's probably less than, I would 100,000 at most. But that number's knowable. It would be out there if it was high, but it's certainly not 2 million. So how do you get those numbers up? First is you recognize and you stop selling that the numbers are higher than they actually are. You admit that you need to increase the numbers, and you adjust strategy, tactics, and procedures to flow. Worksite enforcement. You go where Mike Pence and other Republicans don't want you to go, where illegal labor is fueling industry. Whether it's the farms, the hotels, and all these places that's Rep. Salazar is on the stage of Brookings defending that they need illegal labor and all of that. And you scaled up drastically. Second, you need to build a deportation infrastructure, a logistical system that can really move this many people through it. And so there's two parts to that. One is like the brick and mortar part. You need these huge detention facilities. Right now, the strategy from DHS has to do a lot of fanfare around really small but really cool names like state facilities, like Midway Blitz or Cornhusker Clink. And you're thinking like, that's tight. Like Cornhusker Clink, I like that. And the graphics so cool. And then you read the details, there's like 40 beds or something there. And you're like, that's not a lot of illegal aliens. We need, Holman says 100,000 beds is the bare minimum. House Republicans want to dial that back to 50, by the way. I think we need multitudes more than that. And so you need the brick and mortar facilities built up to process these people through. At the same time, obviously, you need to deal with the court system. And immigrants, illegal aliens are processed through the DOJ, not the Article 1 Article 2 as opposed to Article 3. You need to reform that system so they can move more quickly through it. There's way too much due process, which belongs to us, being afforded to people who invaded this country. It should be a really administrative and quick process. That's how you get the numbers basically up. Eisenhower did it. Trump said he was going to beat Eisenhower. I think he still can beat Eisenhower. He's just got to change tactics, and he can do it.
The back to the fraud in Minnesota, because I think that all these beds are going to be flooded with folks from these hotbeds of fraud programs. The fraud that Nick Shirley uncovered was something like, he said like $100 million through these daycare centers. And then there was, of course, the Feeding Our Future fraud, which was the COVID-19 fraud that was supposed to provide money for children in low-income situations during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we found out that was a complete and total grift. There was actually a story in the New York Times a week or so before Shirley came out with his video that, like, the headline was essentially how Minnesota became a hotbed of fraud, government fraud, waste, and abuse, and it went through, how these Somali population centers in the state used these government programs, use Medicaid dollars, et cetera, to line their pockets and to line the pockets of a lot of people in those communities. And then, of course, you had the autism center that had another 1 to 2 million. So anyway, all this adds up, and the government estimates, according to U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, that this could be somewhere around the neighborhood of $9 billion. And it's death by 1,000 cuts, as what I just laid out kind of shows. It's this program here and that program here and this program here and that program there. How do you go after all, as we talked about, how do you go after all these illegal immigrants? Well, how do you go after all these illegal and fraudulent government programs if it's death by 1,000 cuts?
Yeah. First is, I think people are going to be really frustrated to learn over the course of these potential prosecutions is like we have a lot of legal fraud in this country. Like the system's designed that way, and to prove a white collar fraud crime.
And there were two people from there. There's a thing called fraud tourism that I didn't know about. And these two guys from Philadelphia came to Minnesota because they knew that they could fraud Tim Walz. It's like,
build it into the system.
Yeah.
And so like, it's going to be hard in some of these prosecutions because like the government says you can do this in some instances and doesn't have like the mechanisms to check it. And so in like a quasi legal sense, it's going to be hard to prosecute. It's a system of government. The left is very smart about this. So it happens when you combine like a longstanding socialism tradition in Minnesota with a bunch of Somalians, like they figure out a way to get them money. But how you stop it ultimately is you turn off the spigot, right? That's you can't meaningfully with our current like Congress as constructed.
You're saying at the federal level.
At the federal level. Yeah. You just stop giving them money. You put the burden on the states. They want to waste their money. You go and waste your money, but we're not going to fund it. And so you break the alliance of Republicans having acceptable levels of fraud in their ventures, Democrats having it in theirs, and you end and limit like this welfare state altogether. And I know that's going to be tough, and there's programs that need preserving, but like you got to take not just like cuts around the edges, but a real hatchet to this kind of stuff.
And creating a permission structure for Republicans and Democrats in Congress who care about this issue to really go after it, to really get after it. And you guys at the Oversight Project have already been a part of that. You guys found what was it, $1 million? So tell our viewers about that. This $1 million that you found that was going to go through Minnesota to ISIS-connected. I'm sorry. Yes, ISIS-connected NGOs.
So Nick Shirley took the internet and the country by storm, right? Leading into the new year. Congress gets back. Their very first action is to put forth a bill to fund various government departments and agencies. That bill, and keep in mind, it's always like, the numbers are bad for Republicans, so you got to shut up and vote for it. And we're going to move this. This is our best shot. Don't be a skunk at the garden party. Well, I'm a skunk at the garden party. They put out this bill on like Sunday night, I believe, and it was going to go, they say we're 3 days, the minimum amount of notice they could possibly do to unveil the bill text. The bill text is full of what are called earmarks. Every congressman and senator gets a chance or a certain amount of money to apply to their pet projects. It's a way to keep everyone voting for the bill. And so
which they brought back.
Right.
They got rid of earmarks because it was so much pork.
Right.
And now they brought it back to try to maintain coalition and buy off moderate members who would rather vote with Democrats.
Exactly. So you go to like a Republican and you're like, do you think we should be funding an ISIS-connected, Somali-led, NGO in Minneapolis? They're going to be like, heck no. And they're going to be like, okay, but if we defund that, you don't get your earmark for your special interest. And then they say, all right, I'll shut up. I'll sit down. I'll be a good boy. That's how this works. So they put out this bill and we're going through. We find all these absurd earmarks for left-wing things. Democrats are winning left and right. We're really frustrated. We on our team have a bunch of former FBI level, white-collar fraud investigators. And so they're really good at this. And then people who know how the swamp works. So we just stay up all night, basically, and dig through this. There's this one earmark in Minneapolis. It's Klobuchar and Ilhan Omar. And so that sets off alarm bells, right? And it's $1 million to a Somali-led, not Somali American-led on the website, Somali-led. So, whatever. And it's, some substance abuse center. And we're like, this is interesting. It seems a lot like what Nick Shirley was doing. We, poke around a little bit. I don't know how much substance abuse treatment they're actually doing. Find out that there's ISIS connections. One of the guys was convicted for material support of ISIS. And then there's a TED Talk about that incident where they're going out and blaming America for the fact that they didn't understand that this guy supported ISIS. They're like, the country was never prepared to accept him, you evil people. No wonder he likes ISIS. It's your fault, people. And so that's the center. And Congress is set to fund them to a tune of $1 million just to keep the corruption flowing. And so we called it out. Luckily, the only way to really change politics in that fast-moving environment is you got to freak out on the internet. And a lot of people don't like it. They say, Oversight Project, stop freaking out on the internet. And we're not going to stop freaking out on the internet because it's the only way to get your attention, to get you to listen. And so then members piled on, millions of views. They strip it out. One of the earmarks of a ton of bad earmarks. So a small victory, bad day for ISIS, good day for the Oversight Project, but the grift machine's still going.
Okay, so explain that to me. You always have to freak out over the internet, right? You would think that people across the street who work on Capitol Hill wouldn't be taking all of their cues from social media, but for some reason they do. They should have the fortitude and the prudence to not include that earmark in the first place, especially when it's a Republican trifecta. This bill's going to head to the president's desk and he's going to sign an earmark that provides $1 million to ISIS-connected nonprofits. Are you kidding me? What are you even thinking? But anyway, why is it that it's the internet that is the only way to get an earmark stripped out of this appropriation bill?
Yeah, it's the great democratization of the information and policy debate, right? And so it's they can't control it. They can import more control, by just being on Fox News or in the legacy media, print and stuff like that. And no one can stop you from going out and just calling it like it is really quickly on Twitter and having like-minded people and big accounts pushing it. And they know that messes up how they want to sneak things through and quickly. They'd rather delay you. Put it to you this way. I have tons of great friends, great people who work over there. And we often talk about these things. And I'll say from a professional vantage point, everyone agrees we shouldn't give money to ISIS and it's stupid, blah, blah, blah. And knows the system's kind of broken, but they're like, can you please just not tweet it? Don't just wait. It's never hey, can we have your guys' opinions on how to reform this system? Because they know there's no chance of it being reformed. It's just please don't make our life harder by tweeting it. And so of course we're going to tweet it.
Right. Of course you're going to tweet it. And because that was that's the only way that was going to get stripped out in the first place.
Right.
Which is insane to me that they know that they're doing something evil.
Yeah.
It's just so long as the evil thing doesn't get any attention, it's fine. It's well, whatever. Mike, when we look at the next few months here, it's going to really be heating up. There might be a second reconciliation package. There might be a Supreme Court retirement. There might be all sorts of crazy things happening before the midterms. What are things that you're keeping an eye on leading into this year in 2026? What do you think could be the big developments? Because Oversight Project is not only there with the Minnesota fraud issue right now. You guys were there with the auto pen issue and the Joe Biden mental capacity, mental competency and issues. You guys have kind of been a vanguard for all this type of stuff. You see the thing that's coming next before anyone else does. What are you keeping an eye on right now?
Yeah, well, we got a lot. I'd be a terrible investigator if I told them what was coming next.
That's right.
Like, you just wait. Keep those tweet notifications on. The meta, if I can use such a lofty term, the meta is we need W's on accountability. I hear this everywhere I go. And accountability is a gigantic framework. A lot flows from it. We need accountability for the illegal aliens who invaded the country. We need accountability for the fact that unelected bureaucrats ran this country into the ground via an auto pen over the Biden years. We need accountability for the weaponization of government. We need reform for that. We need accountability for so much. And this connects, like, we like to think and structure ourselves in like these different policy buckets. I think it's a little more simple from the perspective of common sense American. They see people getting away with things they shouldn't get away with. They see an economic system that really isn't servicing, them as well as the previous generations. They see a country kind of collapsing, and they see either like at the top end elites getting away with murder and child sex trafficking in some cases, and at the bottom end, just like absolute like fraud, waste, abuse, and overthrow of like our country. And it's the middle common sense Americans who are stuck in the middle of this. And so it's through that framework where it's like they're upset about a lot of things. It could be various policy disciplines or whatnot, but the core feature of this is they want people to be held accountable just like they are. They've had to bear the brunt of a lot of the regression of this country, and they're sick of it, and they want to see the rules applied evenly. And so that's what we're out to do. Put together evidence, findings, framework, political advocacy that drives and delivering big, fat W's on accountability.
Mike Howell, thanks for coming on the Signal Sitdown.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Signal Sitdown. Before you go, be sure to hit like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you may be joining us. And please remember to give us a 5-star review. We not only love your feedback, but it really does help the show. Remember, it's your government, and together we'll expose how it really works. See you next time.